So the topic we're covering today is asking why communities of color do not emphasize investing in the stock market as a means to build generational wealth. Welcome back, everybody, once again to the channel, Moving Up with the Miclettes.
Moving on up.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Sherri.
I'm Joseph, and you're looking quite golden today.
Thank you.
Yes.
That was the goal.
We have been having some conversation about the topic that we're going to be touching on tonight. And we feel like it is very, very important to have this conversation with you all as we have it with ourselves. Hopefully you can engage with us through the comments and maybe even with other people about this very same topic, and just share your thoughts with us in regards to what we're going to be discussing. So the topic we're covering today is asking why communities of color do not emphasize investing in the stock market as a means to build generational wealth. And that is something that a lot of people have recognized, people that are in the financial industry, studies going back as far back as the late 90s and early 2000s, recognizing that there is a major disparity between white communities and communities of color, specifically black and brown. And so to think that this has actually been going on for 30 to 40 years with media coverage, and 30 to 40 years now in which institutions of higher education have actually been studying this, we recognize that there's a major disparity. And so part of our goal with our channel is to be able to take information that we've learned through our experiences or through our research and share it with you all and have these conversations, especially considering the fact that we are currently in our journey to build our generational wealth.
So, since we are both of the communities, black and brown, and knowing our personal experience with investing or lack of knowledge or things of that sort, why do you think there's such a disparity in between communities of color and, you know, the wealthy people in the country who have been investing for centuries?
And who happen to mostly be white, right? Like, we got to throw that out there. Like, let's not hide behind, you know, that elephant that's in the room, right? There's a huge wage gap.
Yeah.
There's a huge wealth gap between white and everybody else. I think that part of the contributing factors to this, because there are many, I think there's several. One in which I think that when we talk about black and brown communities, specifically African American and Latino / native / indigenous communities, there are centuries of traumatic experience that has been passed down generationally, right? If you think about it from a native / indigenous / Mexican American, Latin perspective, there's a lot of mistrust when it comes down to the relationship with the federal government and or any of its entities, including the financial entities, in this case specifically Wall Street. Why? Well, for specific reasons, land stealing and land grabbing and manipulation through the 17, 18, and 1900s to acquire land from indigenous communities across the country. That going back to the early 1500s. I think part of the misunderstanding that has resulted from this generational mistrust is that the stock market equals the federal government. And people don't want to invest in the federal government because that's how we equate the stock market. And I think that just looking at how land and natural resources, water, you know, agriculture, the way that agriculture is being manipulated and has been manipulated for several hundred years now, I think that those experiences in those communities have led to the mistrust or the distrust and the lack of understanding of how to separate the two.
In regards to the black community, as we all know, excuse me, why there is such a mistrust in regards to the United States, and it's not even just the United States. It's a global issue.
Right.
But, you know, we've just being in the United States for hundreds of years and not having such a gap in between wealth of the communities, it's just we're just trying to catch up. Yeah. And I think just constantly trying to catch up, kind of trying to stay on top of what the Joneses are doing, being focused on maybe the wrong things, maybe having the focus of just saving, being constantly told from our families, just save your money, not necessarily put it into the market so that it can grow. And with that, just since education was not a thing that was legal for a lot of people, or even that they were exposed to, and how much it took for them to even try to get a high school education, having the knowledge of investing your money or where to put your money, having the vehicles of that was slim to none.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at it historically, when you go back to, again, going back to the 1500s, the 1600s, right? Some of the earliest corporations, some of the earliest investments were white owned. The relationship between land, natural resources, indigenous communities, African American / African slaves before liberation, and the exploitation of the human beings and the land and those natural resources. We're still seeing it today.
So in regards to the American dream, and what that might mean to you, myself, or whoever that is, how, I guess, has that affected communities of color in regards to how they either save money, invest money, or, try to build wealth for their families?
That's a good question. I think this understanding of what the American dream is, because it is received differently by different people, it's interesting because the American dream could mean something to someone that is immigrating from a specific country, and yet that American dream could be totally different to somebody who was born here in the United States, right? And that could be applicable across different centuries. But I think the idea of the American dream being that you work hard, you support yourself, you start a family, you own property, or you buy a home, you quote unquote make a life for yourself, and then you pass something down to your next generation, your heirs, right? This idea of making it on your own is the American dream. And I think that that concept has been instilled in so many of us across the different ethnic groups. But I think the way that communities of color, specifically Black and Brown, the way we perceive it has led to our saving habits, has led to our spending habits, has contributed to the lack of investments that I think many of our previous generations of family members and our ancestors actually were willing to take, right? That risk of investing in the stock market, even if they knew about it. Having access to education, right? Education was illegal for so many people other than white males, right? For so many years. And then the idea of owning property was illegal to so many people other than white males. Exactly, right? And so across the country, across the United States, for so many years, you had all these disparities that applied to so many different generations. So this concept of the American dream is something that with each generation that has passed before us in our families, in my opinion, I think that that concept has always been so narrow-minded in the sense of work hard, save your money, and buy something. And hopefully one day you'll have something to show for it.
Well, when I was growing up, the American dream I always heard was, grow up and buy a home, have the 2.5 kids, the dog, white picket fence. Like, it was never actually like invest your money, grow your wealth, own a business, stuff like that. It was more so like the home or owning property. And I don't know, I think like as you get older and, as times change, because back in the day, there's many people who couldn't own homes because of redlining and
Yep.
all those issues
Yep.
that happen with that, which is a completely different topic for another day.
Or you could only own a home in certain neighborhoods because of the redlining.
Exactly. As times have changed, is the focus is more on, especially for us, investing, growing our wealth. And now that I feel like we have the knowledge and have tried to seek the knowledge and finding new ways of, learning or listening or being motivated to actually want to grow the wealth for our family and so we can, set up our future heirs. I think things are changing, and I think there's so many outlets out there that are meant to help, communities of color. It's just, you have to seek it. At this day and age, it's like, there's no reason for you to say, oh, well, I just didn't know.
Yeah. But to add to that, I think you make a great point, right? The information is out there. We just need to seek it. And I think that speaks to the fact that with all the information that is accessible to us, I think people are aware and are hip to the game now, right? People's like, look, the jig is up. We know what's been going on. We know what's happening. And now it's time to actually get that information. And thankfully, we are in an era right now of technology and being able to get that information and it be provided to us from people who look just like us, right? Because that's the thing too. Yeah. For so many decades, you had this financial information that was provided to people, but they didn't look like us.
Yeah.
Right?
So I think it was more intimidating because of that. You just see this guy in a stuffy suit and he's, talking about numbers and, and this and that and rates. And if you're coming from, a low socioeconomic community, that's like the last thing you're thinking about. And all you're hearing is, well, how much do I have to, give out every month? Or, I'm not making this much money. Like, I can't spare this much money. And we're, constantly thinking of like, oh, well, what if I lose it? Or just not being sure, so.
Yeah, I think the idea of investing money, like you said, even if it's $25 a month or $50 a month or $100 a month, we have this idea that we need every cent to go into our bank account, or we need every cent to go into our pocket. And that's not to say that there aren't families that do, because there are families that need every single cent they can possibly get, because living paycheck to paycheck. Yeah. But we were talking about this earlier. And I think part of it also is the fact that when you're younger, you don't recognize what your spending habits are. You don't realize that the amount of money that you're spending on frivolous things is actually preventing you from investing that $50 or investing that $100 that you could easily invest. But you want to go out to eat multiple nights a week. You want to go to the movies multiple nights a week. You want to go out to the club multiple nights a week. You want to buy drinks for you and everybody every night, right? Or multiple nights a week. You want to do this. You want to do that. You want to take trips all over the place. You want to drive everywhere, not realizing you got to pay for gas multiple times a week, right? But we also
the fastest, new car and
I think our spending habits contribute to this. I think the idea of trusting the source of information also is applicable as well, because like you said, seeing somebody sitting in front of you or across from you talking about percentages and numbers and rates, and you don't have that trust with them, then you're not going to feel comfortable taking that action to invest into the market as they suggest.
I think that's fear, you know what I mean? So fear not in just losing your money, but fear in having to trust this person, who looks nothing like me, who, going back to being exploited and having to deal with, certain ethnic groups that, may not have your best interest at heart. Now, since there's so many, platforms where you can actually take control into your own hands, this will be, it's a perfect time. It allows you to have control over it, and you don't have to depend on anyone. Learning about the stock market, about acronyms and the meanings of things, just so that you feel more comfortable in regards to investing in your future and your children's future without having to depend on anybody else.
Yeah. Definitely using the internet as a resource, going and looking at different websites.
Yeah.
Those numbers are confusing and those acronyms are confusing, but taking the time,
Yeah.
either every other day or once a week or a couple times a month, and just studying, researching, and taking what you're learning and putting it into action, right? Because again, knowledge is power, but not if you don't apply it.
Yeah.
Right? How do you feel risk plays a role in our community's willingness to invest in the stock market? Risk applied to money, right? The risk that's involved in taking that 25 or 50 or 100 or $500 and placing it in the stock market.
Well, I mean, like we said before, there's a lot of people of color and just families in general living paycheck to paycheck. So for them to even be like, oh, let me try to budget out $10, $15, it might not be feasible for them, So, and I know even for us, like we said, our spending habits were this, and that, and we weren't really paying attention to what we were spending. And it was like investing, but what if I lose the money? I'm not going to put my money in the stock market because I'm just going to lose it.
Yeah.
But that was because we weren't knowledgeable in regards to, what we should be looking for, what the expense ratios are, or if there's any dividend return or anything like that. Just not having that knowledge, I think, makes you more fearful, and it makes your risk tolerance extremely low, meaning you don't want to do it. Even before we were investing, probably 2 years ago, we were both like, all we were kind of focused on was what we were doing through our employers, just, and even then we were like, dang, they're about to take all that out of my check. Like, can I lower the rate that I'm investing? I think just not having that knowledge base of, what you can potentially gain from investing your money, or just the vehicles, to invest your money, or even if it's, buying property and, renting it out, or, just a Roth IRA or anything like that. Just not having the knowledge is detrimental, I think.
I agree with everything you're saying. I also want to add, I think that sometimes we listen to the wrong people. There are many people that we have come across in our lifetime who have invested in the stock market and lost so much, right? Like, and we talk to other people too, right? My cousin this and my cousin that, my barber here, and my friend at work here, and my cousin's friend, and everybody that invests in the stock market, but they do it without having that knowledge, right? They do it without knowing the fundamentals. They do it without knowing the companies they're actually investing in. They heard that this was a good play, quote unquote, from their friend who has a cousin who's a bartender who overheard a conversation. And so you end up investing money into a company that actually is horrible, right? And so you take your $10,000 or your $5,000 and you basically threw it away. Right. And so now that negative traumatic experience of losing all your money is what sticks in the minds of other people who are having those conversations. And now you are actually discouraged from investing, listening to the right people, right? Who are we listening to? Who are we getting our information from? Are we getting our information from credible sources? Are we getting our information from people who know what they're doing? And that's actually encouraging us to do the same and learn more?
Or you're just getting your information from Craig and them.
Yeah, because Craig and them, they're going to convince you to spend $20.
So you can flip that.
Exactly. That's another topic right there. The stock market is not a casino. We can't go in with the mindset that we're going to spend $10 at a slot machine, come up 20, and then flip that at the blackjack table and make 10 grand off of that. And so now that we've covered all of these different ideas and perspectives on why Black and brown communities are, somewhat hesitant to invest into the stock market, my question for you is, what can we now lead in a new direction with a more positive perspective or a more positive approach?
Exposure. You have to start exposing yourself to investing. You have to start exposing your children to investing. You have to start talking about it with them. You have to start opening their minds and their brains to, oh, what's this? I heard mommy talking about, stocks, and I heard dad talking about index funds, having them, be interested in it, and just kind of including them in the process. Listening to podcasts or watching videos, or, like my dad, he likes to get up at 4:00 in the morning and watch the stock market. And I'm just like, ugh, how, why? But he's exposing himself. He's constantly learning new things. And if you're trying to be in the stock market, if you're trying to invest your money, not necessarily that it just needs to be the stock market. There's many ways you can invest your money by, helping someone start a business, or, owning property, like we said before, just doing anything basically that gets a return on your money. But like I said, it's regarding exposure. Yeah. If there's something you want to do, you need to seek out the source so you can find out how to do it. Yeah. But just sitting there and being like, oh, well, I don't know how to do this, I don't know where to start. Google, your best friend. YouTube University, your second best friend. Taking the time to find out what you want to know, so I want to know about index funds. All right, so I'm gonna just pull up all these YouTube videos on index funds, watch them, go on the sites and see what I can read about them, how I can start investing in them, what's the return on them. And what do you think? I mean, what do you think are some things that could help someone, people of color trying to get into investing, like I said, not necessarily just in the stock market, but into things that they feel comfortable with, shelling money out on?
Everybody gets to a point in their life when they realize that your money is not going to grow on its own. We come to a point where we realize that I can only trade so much of my time and energy for money. We get to a point when we realize I can only generate so many streams of income actively before you start thinking about generating streams of income passively. And so once you realize that you can make money without having to trade your time for it, in other words, passive income, and you start looking at the different vehicles in which that can be done, and like you said, you do your research, you go on the internet, you find the websites, you watch the videos, you listen to the podcasts,
and order those books,
you read the books, and then you start having conversations, right? And it's just like anything else. When you start having conversations about what you're learning and you're being exposed to, it's almost like this whole new world opens up, right? And I can speak for myself as well when I say this. I have had to come to terms with my relationship with money. I have had to come to terms with my relationship with capitalism because I feel some type of way about it, right? And so there's a lot of exploitation in capitalism that I have to understand that my past and my ancestors' past cannot dictate my future nor my family's future. And so my relationship with capitalism and my relationship with money can be much more positive if we take the proper steps to actually apply information so that we can build that generational wealth, right? Because again, everybody comes to a point where they say, I'm not going to work myself to death and expect my kids to be better off than I was. And I think that with that being said, we have to come to a point where we are willing to do the research. We are willing to expose ourselves to things that we were not exposed to. We need to learn things that we were not taught.
Ignorance is not bliss.
No, it's not.
You get left behind being ignorant. So time to make yourself knowledgeable. Learn the fundamentals, learn the facts, learn, what you can and can't do with your money. It's your money. You work hard for it. So make it grow for you. And one last thing. I think that when individual households and individual families create their own generational wealth, communities and societies follow. And so if we're talking about Black and brown communities, if we're talking about Black and brown families, if more and more and more Black and brown families actually started doing active investing, then over generations, maybe one generation or two generations, which is going to be anywhere between 20 to 40 years,
then we're going to look at entire communities being able to benefit. Just because those individual households and those individual families took those steps, then over generations, entire communities benefit.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. It was just something that was kind of, bouncing around between us that we had on our hearts, and just wanted to bring it to you and let us know what you think in the comments. What are some of your ideas in regards to why certain communities may not put such an emphasis on investing or building generational wealth for the future, or, if that's due to past traumas or generational traumas and things like that. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, comment down below, and keep moving up with the Miclettes.
We'll see y'all next time, y'all.